Our youngest president was Teddy Roosevelt. That may surprise some that think Kennedy was, but Kennedy was the youngest elected president. Teddy Roosevelt was his accidency, having come into office as vice president upon the assassination of William McKinley in 1901 up at the Buffalo Exposition when he was shot at close range. At any rate, they had to go looking for the vice president. He felt like that the vice presidency was, how'd he put it, the most useless office ever invented by the mind of man. But he came into the presidency by accident. He took over the bully pulpit, as he called it, of the presidency. I think that's captured in the photograph here. And he was president during the remainder of McKinley's term and had a term of his own. He had 5 young children. Many of you may not know that Teddy Roosevelt lost both his wife and his mother on the same day back in the 1880s. And he headed west. He was an Easterner from New York City. Recently, a photograph of him and his young brother on the windowsill of their brownstone with Lincoln's funeral procession going across the street was identified. So as a youngster, he watched that. He was quite influenced with it. The Roosevelts were a very wealthy family in New York. But after his wife and mother died, he was totally blown apart, and he went west to start a new life. Became a cowpuncher out west. Became pretty good for an Eastern slicker. And he always loved, Western figures. Became famous with some of the old sheriffs and outlaws and so on. In this particular letter, though, he's writing a response to a couple of girls that had written about married life. And he said, this is written after he was president, before he ran again on the Bull Moose Party in 1910. I love this short story of married life, and shall show it to Mrs. Roosevelt. Oh, how well I remember our small figures in the little bed next to us looking steadily over the railing. And if they detected the slightest movement on my part, instantly swarming over with, now, Father, we would like a story. Of course, Mrs. Roosevelt had an infinitely harder time with the children than I had, and did infinitely more. But I am thankful to say that I did do some things myself, and whenever Mrs. Roosevelt was away, and I tried my best to get her off whenever I could, I would act as vice mother until her return, and be at the children's tea, and tell them stories, etc., etc. Then, if there was sickness in the house, I would try to take my share of the work. And then he's written, although Mrs. Roosevelt did infinitely more. This is his second wife, of course. And especially when we had to divide between ourselves the superintendents of the convalescents and of those children who had not yet come down with measles or whatever it was. I still remember vividly one morning when the whole family seemed to be in varying stages of measles. And while the long-suffering mother was trying to get some much-needed sleep, I lay down on the sofa beside Ted's bed. Now this is Theodore Jr., who's buried next to his brother that died in World War I. Teddy Jr. was a general in World War II, the only one that hit the beaches at Utah Beach on D-Day. He died a few days later of a heart attack and was given the Congressional Medal of Honor. And they moved his brother's body to be, who was died as a flyer in World War I, and they're buried next to each other, and I've stood by their graves, and it's pretty, it really is tear-jerking to see the two brothers from two different wars. I lay down on the sofa beside Ted's bed in what was the improvised nursery for the two children who were getting better. Having, as I felt, won the right to repose by telling him a story, I said, now, Ted, Father's told you a story, and he thinks he would like to go to sleep for a little while. To which Ted cordially responded, all right, and Ted will play the organ, which he proceeded to do at a distance of 2 feet from my head, with the evident feeling that he was showing virtuous self-abnegation. How sincerely I pity such clever girls as the writers whom you quote. In every kind of life, the greatest happiness only comes where there is a chance for great unhappiness. But how sincerely I despise the cold or timid or selfish souls who dare not try the great adventure of family life, because it is given to no human being to be certain of joy and not of sorrow. Faithfully yours, Theodore Roosevelt.